Before people get to the point where they've really taken an Andrew Tate, they've consumed a young filly, even if it was just a joke. They've consumed a Sidemen Tinder video. And this is where the church gets it really wrong with creators sometimes. It's like, you can't condemn somebody for going somewhere where you are afraid to go. Hello. Boys and girls, ladies and gents, welcome back to It's That Deep, the podcast. We are on episode 31. I'm your host. My name is Faye Shara, and this is a podcast where everything is that deep. I'm talking current affairs, cultural affairs, fashion, hair, makeup, television, all of the above. It is that deep. And we are back for another week. And let me tell you guys something, yeah. Listen, I made an episode a few weeks ago, basically upon my return, talking about why I call this podcast It's That Deep. And I have never been more validated in my decision to call something, because the things I've been seeing over the last few weeks have really affirmed me in my choice to call this podcast It's That Deep, because the level of reading skills and the level, or the lack, shall I say, of comprehension skills that I've been seeing all about the gaff has been disturbing. It's been alarming. It's unsettled my spirit. And so every day I've woken up and read the news and just been so proud of myself that I called this podcast It's That Deep, because things really are that deep out here. And this week is no different. I think this is going to be a packed episode, I can't lie. So I kind of just want to get into it. Don't want to take too much time. Much has happened this week. And I think, yeah, even as I've been writing the script for this week, I'm like, oh, even me, I'm not really sure where I stand on a few of these issues, but I'm not going to waffle much longer. I think we should get right into it. I do hope you're good. I should have probably said that. Hope you're good. Hope you're well. Hope you've been enjoying the last few episodes. But yeah, let's just get straight into the tea. Okay, honourable pick number 1, and this is going to be an interesting one. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the American rapper Glorilla. Let me tell you something, guys. I know nothing about American rap. I'm really violently uninterested. They all kind of sound the same to me, but Glorilla is apparently one of these like massive US rap stars to come out of the last few years. She's a female artist and people love her. And this week she announced the drop of her latest album titled Glorious, which I think is her actual name. I think her real life name is Glorious Hallelujah. I'm telling you, there is a Nigerian in her lineage somewhere. But she dropped the sort of preview for her new album and sort of told us who's going to be featuring on this album. So of course you've got, you know, your usuals, Meg Thee Stallion, Sexy Red, and then there were a few names that just shook people a little bit and caused, you know, some controversy, as you know, people love controversy. So on the album she features Kirk Franklin, Maverick City Music, and Kiera Shid, all of whom, if you did not know, are gospel artists. They are Christians. Now this obviously opened a can of worms within the Christian community. Some people on one side of the argument are like, yo, what is going on? These are sheep's in wolves clothing. How dare they collaborate with a secular artist? This is how we know the church is turning into the world. And then on the other side of the argument, people are like, no, this is what it is to be a light. This is what evangelism is. This is how we reach the lost. And it's just been so interesting to watch the commentary unfold. I like to listen first and observe before I speak. And I struggle because I'm not sure where I sit in this conversation. And although this context is obviously Glorilla and music, this is a conversation that's repeated itself so much in the Christian community. I've been on panels where we've discussed secular versus sacred. I've had conversations about it, and it seems to be this ongoing theme where there's always some sort of battle with particularly the Christian creative and where they should sit and where they should draw inspiration from and who they should collaborate with and blah 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 blah. I see valid points on both sides of the argument, 100%. I think for me it boils down to how you view collaboration, and I was talking about this last night with my sister, because I think people are seeing that Kirk Franklin Mav City Music are collaborating with Glorilla, and in their mind that collaboration means a cosign. And maybe it's just me, I don't immediately see collaboration as a cosign. And I think making that distinction is important, because then we start talking about carnality and secularism and worldliness. But there are collaborations out there that are not like a cosign. There are collaborations out there that are purely business transactions and beneficial to both parties, whether that's socially or financially or whatever it is. And so I don't immediately see Maverick City or Kirk Franklin or Kiera Sheard collaborating on Glorilla's album as them co-signing whatever themes may show up on the rest of the album, because we know that their songs are not going to be worldly or carnal. I don't see it as that. I see it as an opportunity for them to A, access a wider audience, B, spread the message of the gospel, and C, just get out there a bit more. I don't know. I think it would have been a different case if this was like Maverick City invited Glorilla to feature on their album. That would be a completely different story, but that's not what we're talking about here. She invited them, meaning she's actually discerned, by way of which spirit, I don't know, but she's discerned they have a skill, they have a talent that she wants her audience to also have access to. And I don't think, and this is where the church gets it really wrong with creators sometimes, is like, you can't condemn somebody for going somewhere where you are afraid to go as a Christian. It always baffles me, and I'm not the one to sit up here and defend Mike Todd, and this is not even in my script, so I don't know where we're going, but I will never understand why Christians look at, or not non-creative Christians, which is even a very somehow statement, because every Christian is creative by way of being made in the image of the creator, but it always irks me how Christians who maybe don't practice creativity the way others do look at Christians who take creative risks and point the finger and judge and blame, when it's like, we're supposed to go into darkness. We're supposed to infiltrate darkness. I never understand it, and I'm going to, because when I was writing this, we don't come here and talk about spiritual matters without scripture, do you understand? So I was like, this is something I hang my cleats on all the time. This is a scripture I hold on to all the time, and it stops me from being that person that says they're sheep in wolves clothing, they're this, they're that, they don't belong in the church anymore. This is the scripture that does it for me. It's Matthew 7:15-16. This is Jesus speaking, and it says, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Now, we all know the bit that says you will know them by their fruits, which of course, fruit is a very clear indication of what's going on in someone's heart. However, for me, the real meat is in the previous verse, where it says, beware of false prophets who come to you. Those 4 words make the distinction for me, because now we're talking about proximity. Jesus said to the disciples, beware of false prophets who come to you, meaning that there is a proximity that you must have with someone to be able to properly assess their fruit. And I think my biggest issue is that there's a lot of Christians all around the gaff looking at Maverick City, looking at Kiera Sheard, looking at Kirk Franklin, who don't actually have proximity to them. Listening to their music does not mean you have proximity to them. So they lack proximity, and it's that proximity that actually enables you to properly and fairly judge their fruit. If you give me an orange, I know it's an orange because I've touched it, I've handled it, I've peeled it, I've had an intimate interaction with it to know that it's an orange. But there's a lot of people who are not in the proximity of these people, but are casting aspersions about whether they are fruitful or not. And that for me is very disturbing, and it sobers me all the time, and it humbles me, and it causes me to remember that, look, I can't be just throwing statements out here about people left, right and centre. And those judgments most definitely cannot be based off of what I see or what is presented to me by way of social media, because as Christians, one of our main principles is that we don't live by what we see, or what we're not dictated by what we see. So I think there's a lot of self-assessment that has to go on within the Christian community, where it's like, you may not like what you see, and it's difficult because there are general blanket things that everyone can look at and say, okay, well, that's not a fruit of the spirit, or that's not, You know, I don't believe the Lord would have led somebody to say that, but I think we are too quick to do it to people we don't know and haven't actually intimately handled. And I just think, just I have my favorite scripture is slow to speak, man. Slow to speak. Slow to speak. If they are lacking in fruit, believe the Lord will deal with them. If they're not, then you've spoken in vain. For what? Against your brother or sister. Alright, audible pick number 2. And it's not going to be a long one because for once I'm not hating, I'm just giving positive feedback. Look at that. And our main story is quite the juicy one. If you know, you know. But I want to call the Met Gala. The Met Gala. Why do Americans say gala? Guys, come on. But the Met Gala, because they announced the theme for the Met Gala 2025 and sort of like, not really the dress code because the dress code is coming later, but the theme show. And they also announced the co-chairs of the board for the 2025 gala. So we have, of course, Anna Wintour, head of Vogue. We have ASAP Rocky, Lewis Hamilton, Coleman Domingo. Let me tell you something about that ninja. That's a fine nigga. Oh, I can't say that. That's a fine. And I know he's gay, guys, but wow, he ain't never looked bad a day in his life. We love Coleman Domingo over here. And then who else is there? Pharrell Williams. I think that's all of them. Oh yeah, and then LeBron James is like an honorary member of the board. I don't think he's ever even attended the Met Gala, so that'll be interesting. But the theme of the gala, as you can tell by who is on the board, is about black dandyism. And black dandyism is a style of dress that I want to say erupted. Well, no, I do mean erupted out of slavery, and it sort of tracks black men's fashion from slavery all through, I want to say, the 18th century up until present day. And there's a really heavy focus on like suits and tailoring and just looking fly, you know what I mean? Like if you've ever seen those pictures of like, I don't know, these like 4-piece bands and they're in like their suits and they've got hats and they're tailored. That's sort of the aesthetic of the black dandy, and it's based off of a book which I really want to read actually, which the core of the book is about how fashion post-slavery became a means of asserting identity for the black man. And I find it really interesting that the focus is on black men and not like black women or blackness in general, because I actually think there's a really big distinction fashion wise between black men and black women and how they express themselves aesthetically. I think one thing that I love is that they're acknowledging the role of slavery in how black people show up in America today, because I think it's because it's such a nasty and very finicky history. It's almost like a lot of people want to just extract it from the history of, you know, African Americans. But black dandyism really was a tool that people used to reimagine themselves post-slavery, and almost, and I think this is what fashion does, period, but it allows you to reinvent yourself and present yourself to the world in a way that you may not actually be, but nobody has to know because you look the part. And so it will be really, really interesting. I think remove even the black element, it'll be really interesting to see how people interpret a style of dressing that is specific to men. That will be, we'll see who's really creative then. But then now we add in the race element, it'll be really interesting to see how people interpret that part too. Because that history is so but then also, you know, historically fashion has been very white facing and white focused, and anything black has kind of been alt. So it'd be really, really interesting. I'm not really one for fashion, I'll be so real. Like, if you look nice, you look nice. I've seen some looks at the Met Gala, I'm like, wow, you look really, really nice. That's the extent of my care. But no, this will be interesting. This will be very, very interesting. So yeah, only positive things to say. I think it's great that they're doing, I've spoken about inclusion versus diversity before. It's great that they're doing the inclusion thing and not just the diversity. So we'll see how it goes, man. I don't think I'm going to review it when it happens. Or maybe I will, and I'll bring on a fashion friend. Who knows? But yeah, Met Gala 2025. fashion as a means of expression, fashion as a means of reforming your identity. Who doesn't love it? I love it. So this main story is a very, very tragic one, and I actually want to also give a trigger warning just in case there is anyone listening that could be affected. However, come on, if you've been living under a rock, I don't know, the last however many days, you may have missed that young filly who is a YouTube star, streamer, presenter, multiple things all at once, was arrested in Australia. Oh, not only arrested, he was actually extradited from somewhere in Australia and moved to Perth, where he was arrested for raping and choking a woman in a hotel room in Brisbane. Guys, I don't think you understand. Like, when I woke up, I went on my phone. Well, I spoke to the Lord first, but I went on my phone and my friend sent it to the Twitter group chat. I said, Jesus, what? I said, you lie. You absolutely bloody lie. And I'm like, why was I that surprised? Because the signs have been there, but we'll get into that. But yeah, he was arrested in Australia, and he is being held there. I was reading an update last night. He is being held there up until December. He's posted bail, but they're keeping him there till December because of this egregious act that he did against a young woman. Now, so many conversations to have here. So many. I want to start. Obviously, I gave the trigger warning. I want to just send love to any victims of rape, sexual assault, sexual abuse. It is not an easy thing, but then to also, I guess, relive it every time somebody comes out in the public having had done that, because then it's like you relive it all over again. So I just want to start by sending love to anybody who is affected by that. What do I want to say? I think I want to, personally say, like, this is a shock. I sat on that side of YouTube for years. Guys, I don't think you understand the Sidemens of the world. The young fillies, the chunks, the beta squads, the Harry Pineros. I was there, guys. I loved that content. But as I've gotten older, it's less and less appealing to me. I don't think you understand. Every Sunday evening at 6 p.m, it's a Sidemen Sunday. I was there. I knew what the video was. I was ready to go. And I've noticed that as over the last like year and a bit, it's like less and less. I'm just not interested. Same with Beta Squad, same with Young Philly. And I think A, it's a maturity thing, but B, as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, some of this content isn't actually funny. It's not funny. It's just quite stale, quite humorless, and a lot of it is a disguise for misogyny, to put it quite simply. There's no other word but violent misogyny. And I want to start actually by rewinding and saying that this is not a discipline issue, because I've seen a lot of talk, in fact too much talk online, about how, young Philly is evidence of the fact that men need to really control their sexual desires and need to become disciplined sexually and really deal with their lust. And I really, really want us to be careful with what we're saying here, because that is so what's the word? I think it's egregious to suggest that this is an issue of sexual discipline when in reality this is an issue of somebody abusing the power that they have. And I think it's dangerous, because what it's implying to people who have genuine struggles with lust and genuine struggles with sexual discipline is that if you don't harness this thing, you have the capacity to go to that extreme. And that's not true. And it's so unfair to say to people who have that struggle, this is not a discipline issue. This is an issue of a man who knew he had power and wielded that over a young lady. Was the expression of that sexual harassment, sexual indecency? Absolutely. But at its core, it was a power issue. So I really, really want to go on record and say that please don't go and tell men that, they need to harness their lust and learn how to deal with things, and become disciplined sexually. No, because you're saying that if you don't, you're going to become a rapist, and that's just not true. So I want to start off by saying that. Second thing, and I think the biggest part I want to land on for this main story, is this this issue of content, and I come back to it time and time again. I will go back to what I said earlier in the episode, which is that I no longer live in extremes, because living in extremes is dangerous and it means you miss the journey to the extremes. So when the news first broke, I started writing a TikTok script and I was like, no, let me just put it in the podcast. And what the premise of that script was the fact that maturing is realizing that your favorite YouTube content creators are also red pill content creators, recognizing that it's not only the Andrew Tates of the world that are red pill content creators. People look at Andrew Tate, and very, rightfully so, he is really one of the most extreme cases there is, but they look at him and they say, well, that's red pill content, that's misogynistic content, that's content that degrades women and speaks ill of women. And that is all true, but before people get to the point where they've really taken an Andrew Tate, they've consumed a young filly, even if it was just a joke. They've consumed a Sidemen Tinder video, and I've done it. So this is why I'm like, this is an important conversation for me, because I literally used to watch those videos, but before they've gotten to, I'm talking like now, because this all merges into real life issues. Like, content is not just content. We're talking about, there are actual youths out here, little boys out here literally killing girls. We all know about what's happening with femicide. Like, before a 14-year-old boy gets to really taking in what Andrew Tate is saying, along the line he has sat and he's watched the Young Philly video, and he's watched the Sidemen video, and he's watched, I don't know, and what's that guy's name, Angry Ginge, he's watched their videos, and it's been little seeds here and there. One's a joke, one's just a format that is designed to degrade women, one is just a conversation just talking about an encounter with women. All little seeds that add up to, oh my god, maybe it's just normal to just degrade women. Maybe it's just normal to speak ill of women, to the point that when we get to Andrew Tate, that's normal. That's not a red flag, because it's been normalized along the way. And I think we have to do a better job with calling things out. We have to. Misogyny is not a dirty word. There's no such thing as casual misogyny. There's no such thing as just, oh, boys will be boys, that's a little bit of locker room banter. There's no such thing, because that's why this thing it's that deep. It all adds up. It all contributes to a wider web of what ultimately results in femicide. Call me dramatic, I really don't give a toss. The reason we're seeing femicide at the rates that we're seeing is because along the way, through pieces of content, it's been normalized to speak to women the way men do. It's been normalized to expect women to do certain things, and when they don't, violence is the norm. It's normalized. And so we really have to do a better job with calling out what looks like just boys will be boys and a bit of banter. And I would say the same thing for any other form of discrimination. Racism is not just, I don't find, mocking accents funny. That's a seed. Yeah. I don't find certain things funny because they are seed, which if you don't uproot then leads to a tree. So I think in an age of digital content, and I've spoken so much about digital content on this podcast, and how for the most part it's a really unregulated game, man. So you lot can just say and do anything. We have to be brave enough. And I go back to what I said, I think it was 2 episodes ago, where I was talking about men being the ones to do this, because we women will call it out because we're on the receiving end, but we will also be gaslit the hell out of. So it's no good for us to do it alone. It now requires other men to pull men up and be like, yo, you can't say that. Like, you can't make that joke. That's not appropriate. You can't speak to a woman like that. And I think the issue why things like this persist is because men don't speak up and say to other men, nah, I've got to hold you to account. So one of my friends was like, why would you know who you are? He was like, I took issue with you talking about men, and like, men don't protect women, but this is what I'm talking about. Like, protecting women does not just look like I'm gonna stand in front of you while somebody has a knife waving at you. Protecting women looks like, even when women aren't around, having a conversation with your boy and being like, you can't speak to her like that. you know you can't make that joke. That's what it looks like. And I don't think men have the balls to do it to one another. And I don't know what it is. We could get into a whole conversation here about many things, but let me just leave it there because that's not the focus of this main story. But men have to do the job of protecting women even in their absence, and then we will see what is little seed being uprooted. Then we don't get to the Andrew Tates and we don't get to the young fillies of the world. I would also like to add, and this is a point I've come back to many times, but this kind of, for me, another thought I had was, this is the fruit of an unregulated digital space. Because if you think about, and I really regret to do this, but I'm going to lump Chunks in there as well, but if you think about the Chunks and the fillies and the Harry Panera's day is coming, let me tell you something right now. But when you think about them, a lot of people know them now when they're mainstream, but these are people who were self-starters. They started with a camera on YouTube, with a phone on YouTube, and they were just doing their thing. And again, YouTube is very unregulated. So they did not, and to some degree still do not, have to adhere to any sort of standard or regulation, because the bulk of their work takes place on YouTube, where they can pretty much say what they want and do what they want, and audiences respond to that. Now, when they started doing like the Channel 4 type thing, the digital stuff, there's regulations. I've even worked on a show with Chunks. There's certain things you sign in that contract you cannot say, you cannot do. There's a bit more policing. But digital, like, let me say not digital, let me say self-made content, there's none of that. And I think that's also the danger, where it's like, if Philly had his start in TV and he had his start on a mainstream terrestrial television channel, we don't know that this would have happened, because there's certain standards that you have to live by on and off of camera. And so it's worth raising that question again, like, who regulates these content creators, these podcasters, these YouTubers, even people like myself who literally can just get up and say anything, all in the name of banter, all in the name of the Sidemen are a perfect example. They are like case in point of, you know, grown men who just never really grew up and they really just stayed in secondary school. These are people who are probably former ugly boys, didn't really get attention from girls, but now they've got money and they've got a platform. The Sidemen are not mainstream in the way Chunks and Philly are, and I'm talking like in the UK. They have a way bigger platform, but they don't do the BBCs, they don't do the ITV, they don't do the Channel 4s, so they can do what they want, and they have money, they can literally do what they want. How do we regulate them? How do we make sure that with the millions of little boys and girls that are watching their content, and what they're saying is not inappropriate or derogatory, how do we do that? I really don't know. But it's horrible. It's a damn shame. I hope, and I don't think you guys even understand. I don't know if anyone's read the details of the case. They're talking about, bro, the evidence was so damning on this girl's body that it said there was no room to debate whether this was a consensual act. Like, this was rape, bro. There's no room for English. There's no room for consent here, because it was so damn violent. Like, what are we talking about? It's ridiculous. So I really hope, you know, along with Diddy, that they lock him away, that they melt that key and then they throw it into the bottom of the sea. There's no time here for any sort of sexual abuser. There's and that's a real shame, because I'm not ashamed to say I was a Philly fan when I was much younger. But yeah, horrible. So with all of that being said, guard yourselves, man. I think that's another takeaway, is guard yourselves. It's not everything online you need to be watching and oh, that's funny, Tinder. It's not by force. There's content out there that is good and that is edifying and that is entertaining also. Do we need to do a better job of making it? Absolutely. Does that mean in its absence we must consume utter trash? Probably not. So guard yourself, because there's much happening behind closed doors that is coming to light. I've always said this is the year of exposure, so we'll see what else happens before the 1st of January. But yeah, that's my main story. So many themes in here, so much I could talk about, but I do want to keep it short and sweet. I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. It's been a deep one. I enjoyed making this one. I did. But yeah, as always, let me know your thoughts. This never is supposed to be a monologue, more of a conversation. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, let me know what you guys are thinking. Like, comment, share, subscribe, share with a friend who you think has some thoughts as well. I might add, are nearing 100 subscribers, so keep sharing, please. It would be amazing to hit 100 before the end of the year, and we're closer to 100 on Spotify than we are YouTube, which is great. But I'll be back next week for episode 32. Thank you as always for tuning in. Much love. Always appreciated. And we'll be back with a new set of stories. So see you when I see ya.